Good morning to everyone. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have the wonderful Alex Lee playing music for us today. So this morning's tale for all ages comes from a book called The Fog. It is written by Keo McClear and illustrated by Kennard Pack. I love that the author of a book about fog is named McClear. Far north, on a wild sea, was an island covered with ice. People came from around the world to visit this special place. Most of the birds living on the island paid little attention to these visitors, but there was one bird, a small yellow warbler, who did pay attention to the visitors to Icy Land. There was always a new human for him to watch. He named the different humans things like number 611, behatted bibliophilic female. Nothing else Warble did made him happier. But one day, something happened to interrupt his happiness. That day, a warm fog rolled in from the sea. All morning long, it wisped and swirled, climbing hills and spilling into valleys. By lunchtime, the brightness of morning had faded to a silvery blue. By dinner time, the fog had turned everything ghostly. For days, Warble sat high in his tree and waited for a strong gust of wind to come lift the fog. He waited and waited. He tried to chase it away. But no matter what he did, the fog came back. Warble invited his neighbors over to discuss the situation. Robin said, "It's just a little fog." Owl said, "The fog has come. Sometimes these things happen." Swan said, "I like what it does to my feathers." Only the ducks seemed to care. The next morning, a new sign appeared, and it said, "Welcome to Fogland." The renaming of the island had a curious effect. Many of the birds began to forget that there was ever a time before the fog. But Warble noticed the changes. He went to tell the others what he had seen, but they were too busy learning about light bulbs. Even the ducks had moved on. The fog continued to spread. Warble still waited in his tree, hoping to spot a human. One foggy morning, he spotted a colorful speck in the distance. Peering closely, he saw a dark-haired human ghosting through the meadow. It was a rare female species called red-hooded spectacled female, juvenile. Happy to see a human again, Warble offered her insects to eat. She liked them. The human, in return, offered Warble gifts and showed him how to fold intricate paper things. And there they stayed, eating insects and folding paper and speaking in every way except with words, until Warble made a surprising discovery. "Chirp, chirp." "I'm listening," said the human. "Chirp." "Really?" "Chirp, chirp." The human also saw the fog. Warble asked if she thought there were others who saw the fog too. She was unsure. How could they find out? That's when she had an idea. She opened her backpack and set to work. The human made a paper boat and floated it out to sea. The writing on the boat said, "Do you see the fog?" When there was no answer, they launched more boats. And finally, boats and notes arrived from around the world. "Yes, we see it. We want to fix it." With each boat, the fog began to lift a little, and the wind began to blow again until the world grew a little less ghostly, and it became easier to notice things. Big things and tiny things, shiny red things, and soft feathery things. And slowly the island brightened and the stars came out. The moon drifted in the sky, and they began to sing. They sang to each other and to the moon, and because they were happy to be together, sharing the clear night sky. So may it be.
Good morning, and welcome to the online service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook. My name is Deede Cook, and I am pleased to be acting as your worship associate today. Our service leader this morning is our minister, Margie Allen. Our director of religious education is Deb Little, who just wrapped up our weekly children and youth program that takes place each Sunday morning from 9:45 to 10:15. I would like to offer a special welcome to anyone who is visiting us today. I've been a UU member for some time now, but I will never forget attending my first UU service and meeting all the wonderful people afterward. I knew right away that I had found my tribe. Our services do vary in style and content, so we hope you will visit us more than once to get a true sense of who we are as a community of faith. Ours is a liberal religion with no fixed creed that everyone must accept. We are guided by 7 principles and multiple sources of inspiration. You will find more information about this on our website, UUFSB.org. All people are embraced by our fellowship, so if you are here, you are welcome. After our morning service, we will have a virtual coffee hour, and we would love to have you join us. Just stay in this meeting a minute, and our tech team will turn on the audio and video for everyone. It takes just a little while, so please be patient while they weave their technical magic. After coffee hour, if you want to move into a smaller chat room for deeper conversation, please do. It is a wonderful way to get to know people. Simply leave the coffee hour, go to our website, UUFSB.org, or yesterday's news feed, click on Small Group Chats, and soon you will find yourself transported to a small conversational group of exceptionally fine and nice people. Thank you all, and welcome to our fellowship.
With the sounding of our morning bell, we create the sacred space within which we reach together for the larger we are as a fellowship, and as embodied conduits for the spirit of life that flows through us on the web of all being. O come, O come.
Pardon me, technical problems here. As we light our chalice this morning, we bear in mind that hundreds, if not thousands, of fellow UU members throughout the world are also lighting a chalice today to mark the beginning of their worship service. We are united in spirit by the words of Cynthia Landrum. Please read with me. We light this chalice, the beacon that calls us to love, to justice, to a deepening of the spirit.
Good morning, friends. This morning I want to explore a feeling that's been rolling into me over the last few months. And I think more than a few of you may be experiencing the same sort of thing. I wonder if we see it and name our experience here, as the inhabitants of Icy Land saw and named the fog that reconfigured their land and robbed them of their sense of home and distanced them from their own agency. If we name it as they did, I wonder what insights we might together discover for ourselves in our time. Our opening hymn has always evoked for me the feeling of being unmoored and adrift in unfamiliar territory, and in touch with an insidiously disabling grief. Of course, this hymn, Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, has its origin in the pain of separation when families of enslaved human beings were violently lost to one another in the heartlessness of the slave trade. We begin here, trying to even imagine how anyone could survive that pain, and listening to where the song touches us each today at a time when a global pandemic forces a different kind of radical separation and a different kind of sorrow and disorientation. We'll hope you sing with us.
A passage from Linda Hogan's novel, Power. The wet air curls against me as I sit in the boat without seeing through the fog. I'm without my bearings, lost between the elements of air and water. It happens this way, that sometimes when a person sits in a boat, surrounded by water and fog, so thick, so deep, there is a dizziness. It seems the boat has turned over and is rising, moving upward through the sky like a vanishing cloud. Or it descends to new depths in the world beneath, as if to fall into underground rivers and be carried away. Without her bearings, this person loses her place in the world. She must sit still, without panic, and wait for a glimpse of something to emerge from the fog. Maybe there will be a clearing through which a tree branch is seen, or a shard of blue sky, a hole in the fog that is an open place. Or there will be the sound of frogs from below, or a crow above, or the scent of a flowering tree that smells for all this world like paradise and draws you toward it from the center of water and fog. Or it might be a waiting bird that appears out of the thick whiteness, and since its feet touch bottom, you can tell which way is up, which is down. You can tell where gravity lives. Then, only then, can you believe there is something solid in the world. And so I sit here in fog and air and wait for something to become visible.
Isn't that a magical reading? And so well read, Deede. I invite you now to join me and each other in a time of meditation, time of reflection and prayer. We'll have some words, a time for that reflection in silence, and then a hymn. It's number 88 in our hymnal, Calm Soul of All Things, with Bethany on piano and Maureen leading us in singing. I hope you'll sing or hum along. I wonder if the experience Linda Hogan described in the excerpt Deede read feels at all familiar to you. That sense of being lost, enveloped in a thick fog, disoriented, dizzy, ungrounded, and helpless, reduced to waiting in confusion and borderless isolation. As we prepare to enter alone and together into our time of silent contemplation, I invite you to ask yourself what it was that you clung to for comfort and hope while you waited for something solid and real to appear in that trackless and insubstantial fog. What was it that helped you know that you would emerge and that you would find a new way forward? So ask and then listen. Listen for that still small voice within that brings only light and tells only truth. And in the quiet, a photo to rest in, taken by Linda Anderson of the extraordinary eastern sky at sunset in the Stony Brook M section this past Wednesday.
amid the city's jar, that thou abides a peace of thine I did not make and cannot mar. Thou wilt do neither strive nor cry, the part of ill with others give. Call me more, nor let me die before I have begun to live.
We support and sustain our fellowship through gifts of time, talent, and money. For us, giving is a spiritual practice. Each month, we share the plate with an organization devoted to social justice. This month, we are sharing the plate with Community Solidarity. Community Solidarity is a grassroots food share organization that serves low-income communities in Long Island and New York City. They provide fresh produce, groceries, and vegetarian meals to families in need. They collect and redistribute clothing, toiletries, books, and toys. They rescue fresh produce destined for the landfill, and they organize community garden projects. During times of major storms and emergencies, thousands of community solidarity volunteers work around the clock helping struggling families. Times are tough now. Many people are suffering financial hardship. So, for those of you who can, please be generous in your donations to the fellowship and to our social justice partners. We depend upon your gifts and your pledge payments to support the good work we do together. We deeply appreciate your contributions, your commitment, and your generosity. You will find details on how to make your contributions and how you would like to allocate them on our webpage or in the news feed. Thank you. Alex Lee, who has been most generous with her talent, plays this morning's offertory, a beautiful, foggy piece by French Impressionist composer Claude Debussy entitled Voile, which translates to veils or sails.
fogged in. That's the perfect setting for it. Alex, thank you so much. It's so good to see you again and hear your work. Beautiful. So my reflection begins with a poem by Gail Brandeis called Feeling East. I used to think east was wherever I pointed my right hand. I was 6, my body the center of space, the axis upon which directions turned. When I learned directions are fixed, that our bodies move through space like fish, east became the sunrise, but even more so, the lake. Around Chicago, Lake Michigan is what is east. And my body could always feel its presence. Riding home from the city, dozing in the back seat, I always knew where we were. Living out west now, I find directions hazy as smog. My right hand points to mountains, to palms, but their presence looms light in my body. When I get lost, and I do, I close my eyes and try to feel east, tracing sharp shores of memory, the pull of the lake in my blood, following the 3 right turns home. Gail Brandeis, Feeling East. There's so much going on in the world around us right now that makes it hard to feel the east our bodies use to keep us oriented in a changing world. East, whatever it is for each of us, is not supposed to leave us when everything else seems to be slipping out of our hands. I'm sure I'm not alone in the feeling, for instance, of being unmoored, adrift in time. Every day, as they say, is Blur's Day. We ask ourselves regularly that question that doctors and nurses ask of sick people in hospitals. What day is today? It's Blur's Day, I think, or maybe Blur's Day. To be honest, I'm not really sure. Not to mention the other common general orientation question, can you tell me the name of the President of the United States? That sounds like a trick question these days. Anyway, time is warped for us right now. It flies by, it stalls, nature colludes in messing with us. A late frost, days of rain, a packed hurricane season, massive California fires in November, peculiar local high winds that stripped the colors from the trees before they were even done turning. We're also unmoored from our routines. I think of myself as very flexible in how I get things done in my life. It's our animal companions that depend on routine for sanity, isn't it? Yeah, no. It turns out that we human beings also use routines to frame our days, especially the children among us and the older folks. And the routines we've built turn out not to be terribly amenable to pandemic conditions. The embodied routines that have partitioned our days and weeks and months have crumbled since March. Separation anxiety, Blur's Day, travel restrictions, encumbered shopping, Zoom, school in the house, office in the house, 4 walls. Changes in routine cause anxiety, clinginess, irritation, helplessness, nearsightedness, all things that keep us floating in the mess rather than seeing beyond it. But that's another problem. There's no beyond it. This pandemic has robbed us of most foreseeable elements of a future. There's no horizon in a fog, nothing to aim for, no stars to guide you, nothing to look forward to, nothing you can picture clearly, because how the world works has been altered. Unable to gain even minimal control over pandemic conditions, we're unable to trust that the normal we knew will reappear post-pandemic, even if we wanted the normal we knew. And this holds true for our national situation. In the middle of everything COVID, we made a critical political transition. But the government we once may have been able to trust to mostly have our backs, especially those of us with white backs, has proved itself to be more dangerously vulnerable to neglect of those in need, to overt corruption, to epidemic lies, and to the failure of our precious democratic process than we would ever have thought possible. Can you see how normal it might be right now to feel befogged and adrift? Many of the things that frame and protect a meaningful life, that stabilize us in the normal course of change, have crumbled or vanished. And for the most part, for most of our lives, we've been largely unconscious of the very presence of that framework. We assume it and forget it. It's that stable. Because of that, we have a harder time accounting for the fog that rolls in when the framework disappears. Both my parents died when I was in my late 30s, back in the 90s. And I remember being surprised to find out how much I relied on the idea of my parents as sturdy and reliable supports of my life, even though I'd been perfectly independent for many years. When they disappeared, I had the frequent mental image of leaning towards them and finding myself falling into a weird kind of helpless free fall. Their presence had been built into the structure of myself, but I did not become aware of their structural role in my young adulthood until I felt their absence. So it is with the structures of time, the structures of government, the structure of the seasonal cycle, the structure of a future horizon, human routines. We need to be able to trust them. When we can't, fog, free fall, darkness, fear. This is true, finally, with our connections to other living beings and the earth as well. Loss also blows portions of what holds us together into rubble. And you know as well as I do that none of us are at a loss for loss these days. Our connection to others is critical to our well-being. And in more ways than I have time to name right now, cumulative loss haunts us. Early Saturday morning, I saw in the news that Middle Collegiate Church in New York's East Village was gutted by a horrendous 5-alarm fire. Linda and I and many other UUs have spent a lot of time in that 130-year-old building while attending the marvelous annual Revolutionary Love conferences. Their minister, the Reverend Jackie Lewis, is a force for good among us, the congregation a model of diversity in union. No one died in the fire, but the image of the fire glowing in the familiar windows of the blackening facade felt like an emblem of pandemic loss to me, the structure failing the life it harbored. We're separated from our tribes right now when we need them the most. People we know, people we love have died, are sick, in hospital. Hope Johnson, an emissary of love for all Unitarian Universalism, and the regional staff person assigned to support Long Island UU congregations, died last week of lung disease related to her service at 9/11 Ground Zero. Our whole faith rocked with that loss. Irv Frankel, a member of this congregation who with his wife Shelley moved away some years ago, died in early November. Shelley moved back to Long Island last weekend and was hospitalized nearly immediately with a diagnosis of COVID. Jackie Chartrand, Jaden and Kelly O'Donnell, Allie Riddle are all recovering from the virus. And yesterday, over 200,000 people someone loves tested positive with the virus, and over 2,200 people died, mostly without family members present. Bottom line, we are more than usually vulnerable right now to getting lost in the fog and thinking the problem is us, that we are crazy or lazy or sick. And I'm here to tell you that if you feel like you've lost your mojo, if you just sit and stare, if you keep yourself super busy because your quiet thoughts scare you, if you can't work up the energy to do that thing, if you're eating cereal for dinner much too often, if you've gained 20 pounds now that you and your fridge keep constant company, if outdoors feels like a foreign country, if you're numbing out to your household and your work, if child abuse is suddenly on your mind, if your social media and television are consuming you, if you're blowing out your candle on both ends, you are not alone. And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay because you are not alone and you know you're not alone. We're naming it together here today. And the fog will, in time, begin to clear. I want you to rest this holiday season because you know what? Our lives and our children's lives have been too busy with things that don't matter much for too long. Even our so-called vacations can wear us out. Stopping completely just isn't something we do when we are firmly within the frame of our usual routines and priorities. Now we know we all needed rest, real rest, doing nothing rest, no schedule rest, even minimal gift shopping rest. We're tired. I urge you to take advantage of the pandemic. Pause as much as your circumstances allow. This is a time in nature when animals and plants in our hemisphere burrow in and under and sleep. This is a time in our faith cultures when we remember that darkness and hibernation too serve us, and that the lights of hundreds of faiths soon to be lit in the time of the winter solstice are symbols of the promise that even the thickest fog will burn away in time. I'm going to ask you, please stay home for Christmas and live. Next Sunday, I'll be talking about reinvention, which is another thing that can happen in a pandemic pause. A quest to uncover the thread that connects you most surely to the goodness of life, to weave it more securely into your story, and to hold on to it as you reinvent yourself for a post-COVID world. And as I come to a close here, if you came up with an answer to the question asked of you in our meditation earlier, I'd love for you to share it with everyone in the chat, or with me personally if you prefer. What was it that you clung to for comfort and hope while you waited for something solid and real to appear in a trackless and insubstantial fog? What was it that helped you know you would emerge, that you would find a new way forward? How do you feel east? Our closing hymn is a prayer for clarity in the embrace of the calm soul of all things, the quiet eddy in the sometimes tempestuous flow of life energy in which you can rest and look around and figure out where you are and where you're going next. Please join us in singing with Dan and Jess and Melissa as Bethany leads us in hymn number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life. Singing itself, even if you think you can't sing, is to your body the blessing of breath in a breathless world. Breathe in, sing out.
Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts flow restlessly, let peace find a home in me. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Help me live my wordless creed as I comfort those in need. Fill me with compassion, be the source of my intuition. Then when life is done for me, let love be my legacy.
There was a time when I was a youngster that I used to think that I had a special ability to see in the dark. I could make my way through the house in the dark, even up and down the stairs without bumping into things. It turned out, of course, that I just have a good spatial memory. In the dark, I could still see in my mind's eye the positions of objects for the most part, and I counted the stairs. Memory was the thread I held on to when darkness came. Our closing words are a poem by Margaret Atwood. The poem's called A Boat. Evening comes on and the hills thicken, red and yellow bleaching out of the leaves. The chill pines grow their shadows. Below them, the water stills itself, a sunset shivering in it. One more going down to join the others. Now the lake expands and closes in, both. The blackness that keeps itself under the surface in daytime emerges from it like mist or as a mist. Distance vanishes. The absence of distance pushes against the eyes. There is no seeing the lake, only the outlines of the hills, which are almost identical, familiar to me as sleep, shores unfolding upon shores in their contours of slowed breathing. It is touch I go by, the boat like a hand feeling through the shoals and among dead trees, over the boulders, lifting unseen, layer on layer of drowned time falling away. This is how I learned to steer through darkness by no stars. To be lost is only a failure of memory.
As the end of our service draws near and we prepare to extinguish the chalice, I read the words of Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. May the warmth of community and the fire of commitment stay deep within our hearts until we are together again.
Our benediction is a little poem by William Stafford called The Way It Is. There's a thread that you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you can do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. Amen.